So my name's Nancy Nowacek. I'm an artist and an educator. I've been working with the New York City waterways for over 10 years now. So my point of view has been very much shaped by Sandy. Even though my interest in the waterways started before Sandy, it really came, it really changed after Sandy. And this workshop is a culmination of a lot of these 10 years of work. And by that, I mean, I have been deeply engaged with city government and all of the stakeholders around the waterways, right? And thinking not just about how to reconnect New Yorkers to their waterways, but also how to rethink our connection to the waterways for kind of futures. But before we get there, I want to start out with a land acknowledgement. Right, New York City has past been home to the Muncie, Lenape, Canarsie, Rockaway, Wappinger, Wequinnock, all the other names that I have not pronounced practiced. And more acknowledge that there are groups whose names we do not know and also part of this time, right? New York City is a space currently home to over 110,000 Indigenous people. It is important to acknowledge that we are on their land. And I believe that actually, if there were more Indigenous leadership on the land, we might be in a different situation today around climate. So having said that, welcome to Encounter to Farpoint. I don't know if there are any trekking fans in here. The name for this workshop comes from an episode, Next Generation, episode 1, comes from this moment where actually a character falls into the water on the holodeck. Is everyone following me? Does everyone know the holodeck? So the holodeck is a simulation. It's like a simulation space in Star Trek and Star Trek The Next Generation. So consider it like a virtual reality world that you can walk into with your physical body and not just with goggles. And so what's really interesting about this particular episode is that a character is in a simulation of a woodland environment and falls into a creek and comes back into the Starship Enterprise fully wet, right? So he's entered a simulation that's not supposed to be real, but yet he comes back completely wet. And for me, that was a really interesting metaphor from which to begin to think about how we might rethink our relationship to water. And so the question that I'm interested in asking with you all today is how might we cohabitate with water as the storms increase and sea levels rise and more water enters into our city and other cities? And just to give you a little bit of history of me, so like I said, I've been working on the water for over 10 years. I was really inspired by a piece of writing that Walt Whitman did as a journalist about how Buttermilk Channel originally had a walkable a sandbar at low tide, and that farmers would walk their cows across this sandbar at low tide to graze on Governor's Island, which catalyzed a vision for remaking that walk via a temporary floating sculpture / walkway, which I pursued for many, many years between Brooklyn and Governor's Island. That was the most recent version of the project, but it has since spawned many other projects. Most recently, a project called Key from the City, in which I offered a frozen key. Yes, as far as I know, maybe not. Here we go. Now it's recording. Oh, you have to do it because I don't have permission. I offered all the 2021 mayoral candidates keys from the city, so keys from the citizens to the future mayor, and the keys were made of water from the New York City harbor that were frozen. So they were large ceremonial keys that, as they were presented, started to melt. Right, which is I think it's a metaphor for how important the waterways are to the city, and I think, there wasn't a lot of conversation about the waterways.
Certainly sounds like a political metaphor for New York.
Yes. So anyway, so again, like I said, the ideas for this workshop have been percolating for quite some time. And So I don't know if anyone is, or how familiar you are with the kind of map of early New York, right? This is, because this is about Sandy and a lot of people here today were from Red Hook, right? This is early Red Hook. And then this is early Gowanus, right? And if you see this early map, this is from 1776, 1766 and 67, right? It's actually no surprise that these places flood a lot because they're originally made of water. And Kate Orff was talking earlier about how geography is destiny and being landscape literate, right? Once you begin to learn and unpack or like de-layer and dehistory the city, right? You begin to realize, oh, the water just wants to be there. So
You have to add that this was a critical site for the Battle of Long Island.
yes, this was also that. Thank you. So this is actually a part of the Manhattan Project, which is trying to re-envision what the city looked like before it was actually populated by people. And so this is just a little piece of what Red Hook looked like hundreds of years ago. Yeah, please.
Populated by Western colonists.
Thank you, thank you. Of course, absolutely, thank you.
This is very much an inhabited.
Yeah, no, yes, exactly. This was very much before it was intervened upon by European settlers. Thank you very much for that correction. So this is my other visualization of what New York City and like the borough of Manhattan and the other boroughs looked like before Western European settlers came. There are a lot of places, not just only in Red Hook and Gowanus, but around Manhattan and Queens, right, that were marshy areas with creeks and some trees or reeds. This is a view, this is actually contemporary Nebraska and contemporary.
You can find this in New York, like in Alley Park or in Jamaica Bay.
It's true. It's true. But what's interesting to me is kind of to look at this and superimpose this over, let's say, Gowanus or, you know, parts of New York where that doesn't exist anymore. And I'm sure a lot of you know, right, the current New York City plans, right? And I think Hank Ovid put it really, really well when he's talking about fixing the pipes, right? And there was this beautiful moment in that 1:30 conversation in the auditorium, right, where there was this like, I think he also said, you know, you can't fix the problems with your back to the future. But also, right, you know, you have to fix the pipes, right? So these, you know, these plans, you know, I think of as fixing the pipes, and they're important and necessary steps to keep the city functioning. But I want more from the city than just a reactionary stance. And so that's what this workshop is about thinking, you know, like actually thinking with our faces towards the future. And so, you know, part and parcel of that, sorry, I'm a little flustered because I have to do this really quickly. And this is normally a much longer thing, but I'm excited to share this with you. So is somebody coming in to help record? Okay. Hi. Yeah. Sorry, I had to plug in my own computer.
That's why.
Well, what can I do? I need to use my own computer. So
Okay, we lost the people from the Zoom then, I'm assuming.
well, I just logged back in. Sorry, everybody.
So the links that were sent out are
Mhm.
inactive. We had to create new links.
Well, I don't know what to tell you. I have a limited amount of time
Yeah, of
and I want to
course.
share this information. So what can we do so that everyone in here and I can keep working?
Do
Do you
you
want
have?
me to log out and do you want to log me into a new Zoom?
So the Zoom was on here. I don't have the Zoom. You may get started. We'll figure something else out. I don't have the login for the Zoom. I was not the creator.
Oh, okay, maybe you can go find that out and I'm happy to re-log in. Okay, cool, thanks. Okay, so one thing one thing that helps me think about, and again, you all seem like you might be people that are familiar with some of these ideas. So please, bear with me as we kind of move through some of them. Sometimes when I run this workshop, there's a lot of people who haven't even thought about this at all. So one of the things I think about is not what we're doing in New York City, but what are other people doing elsewhere? So you've seen images like this before in the Acqua Alta in Venice, right? Let's just raise the floor over the water and build these kind of temporary footbridges. There's also these kinds of individual adaptations as we get more and more water. This is a gentleman in Wuhan, China, walking on stilts to stay above water. In communities where there's more water, there's also, things like floating markets, right? So there's also houseboats. And this is Nassau Haven, the first floating street in Rotterdam. You might be familiar with this. In researching this workshop, I didn't know that are now streets made of water and also amphibious homes that rise off their foundations when they're flooded. Have you heard of this before? Okay.
Yeah, but it sounds like the community that existed on the Tigris in Iraq.
That's a great point.
Yeah, 2 million people displaced, and Hussein, whose lives were on basically, I guess it's the Delta region.
Awesome. And then these are other kinds of tactics that come from, I think, that really have been pioneered by the Dutch, but this is in Pamplona. This is capturing and holding water through the landscape. This is starting to happen in places. I know there's a sponge park in Gowanus. This is readapting a floodplain in Wuhan, China. But then there's also things like aquaculture, right? Things that are like really like looking to the water as a source of livelihood. These are floating gardens in Bangladesh. So these are things that are already happening around the world, including repatriating coastal spaces to indigenous populations for stewardship. And that's personally something that I'm very, very interested in seeing more of. We also have near potentials. So things like floodable homes in the Philippines, these are renderings. I don't know where these are in process. So the idea is that the first floor of the home is actually constructed to be flooded with a second floor walkway linking homes so that there might be circulation around the neighborhood in times of flooding. I just found this, and I don't know the origin of this. This is actually a sketch by Ettore Satsas in 1972 of floating homes, floating communities. But here is a rendering from Masood Abedimogadam from the University of Nebraska. This is actually a proposal for an entire floating community in Lagos. So thinking about how to kind of bring all components of a community's ecology into these kind of floating circular spaces. You're probably also familiar with things like the prototype floating school in Lagos that has since been taken down. There's also the NBA did a floating basketball court prototype. Also in Lagos, there are proposals for floating agriculture. So this is a floating dairy farm where it's powered by solar panels, rainwater is collected on the roof and purified. Most of the feed from the cow comes from the city, from things like spent grain, bran, potato scraps, as well as grass from athletic fields. And sometimes the farm docks and the horses, the cows get off and actually graze on the land at the side. There also are proposals for floating work. This is inspired by the remaking of global finance. So this is the idea. This is a blockchain banking engineer in 2030 going around on a ski-doo to do some banking on a solar-powered buoy. There's also, I can't believe this was in 2009. This was a cabinet meeting in the Maldives. Yeah, but that was 2009.
And Danny was in prison now.
Yeah. And also the idea of submerged recreation. This is artist Andreas Franke's work, The Sinking World, these kind of submerged art exhibitions that you have to scuba dive to see. Then there's also this kind of speculative fashion. This is called the Venice heel. The Venice heel comes in two styles, high tide, right? So this idea that like you actually put your shoes into these shoes and they raise you above the water. And then we have D-Land's great proposal years ago for, resoftening the edges of the city. So it's all a ways to say there's lots and lots of ways that people are already cohabitating with water in new ways and proposals for the future. My question for you is how can you imagine cohabitating with water in the future? And what kind of headlines do you want to read about climate change in Gowanus or anywhere else in the city in 30, 50, or 100 years? So what I'm interested in today and inviting you to do is thinking beyond the probable via the preposterous, right? To be visionary and not reactionary. Thinking about merging unlikely systems or uncoupling systems that are really tangled up in each other to discover more possible and more preferable potential solutions. So I just want to brainstorm for a minute. What do you all see as implications of a watery future? So where do you imagine water coming into the city?
It's an estuary, so it's already on it.
Yeah, but given that so much of the city, right, has water in it that we've covered up.
But I mean, the pioneer, and it's almost 100 years old now, modern reopener was San Antonio, the Riverwalk over there. That was, I think it was a New Deal project that they did. And certainly they've done a little thing like that in Yonkers with the Sawmill River of opening. It's amazing to see. You only see a portion of the river, but you hear it.
I see what you're saying.
How fast flowing it is where they're opening up. So while you just see part of it, hearing the water is another way of experiencing it. And I somehow think knowing of how much was covered up, but is still there, reopening those portions where you can, getting back more, I guess, park-like things to link places which we could do, which would provide for better drainage. I mean, as a kid, as a lifelong New York kid, in early 60s junior high school earth science in Queens, one of the things that we learned about was during the construction of what is now Kennedy Airport. In the late 40s, the Port Authority diked the Idlewild wetlands.
Yeah.
And they filled it with clean fill, which was sand that was taken from the continental shelf, pumped over the Rockaways into there. What they never thought of was providing for drainage in Southeast Queens. So for almost 3/4 of the century, that area has had terrible flooding problems because the Airport Act, which is critical to the city and
Yes.
borough, as an entity, is also a dike. How would you open it up? Also, when they were doing the federal discussions for what became Gateway, it was revealed the edge of the airport on the bay is a beach. They go, can we go there at night? It's not a beach that you want to go to with planes, the end of it, but that's there. So to me, there are all these elements there if we figure out smart, safe ways of doing it. And I think that a lot of it comes from the smartness here. Someone on a panel that I was at just before, it was an EJ panel, was from Staten Island and mentioned the Blue Belt. The Blue Belt was actually, the Blue Belt is a use of the natural water system on the southern part of Staten Island to deal with stormwater runoff and drainage rather than build an expensive sewer system.
Right, right.
And that was Staten Islanders that came up with this. This was not civil engineers that came in from somewhere else.
Right.
And that's become a model. So my sense is that there's a lot, there could be, or probably is a lot of thinking and knowledge, you know, like that, that you could begin to weave together.
Sure. Well, thank you. Thank you. What's your name?
Bruce.
Bruce. Thank you, Bruce. Bruce just shared a lot with us about maybe some potential ways of thinking about opening parts of the city back up to the water. There are other ways to, I think, other ways to imagine more water in the city, right? Through sea level rise, like, I mean, basically water reclaiming the original edges of the city. We all know that we're having more and more storm events, so we have these periods of more water in the city. So what I'm hoping to do with some of these questions is just to kind of begin to warm your brain into thinking about what will have to change as more and more water comes into the city. And again, this isn't necessarily practical, what I'm asking you, the ways I'm asking you to think about. You know, if you live in a place that floods regularly, or if you live in a vulnerable coastal area, how might you walk your dog, right? How might just leaving your house in the morning change? So that's like a mundane thing that maybe you could think about, or something more monumental, like how will New York City be defined? Will it be defined more by the edges of its land, or more by, you know, the amount, like where we put our boundaries in the water? But also, what might more water bring with it? I mean, we're already starting to see in the goannas jellyfish, dolphin. I hope, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if it did. I would hope not. Right, but think about like what plant and animal life comes with more water, and as the climate itself begins to become more humid, and as we begin to get warmer temperatures and more water. You know, what known methods or technologies do we already have to help us cohabitate with water? Anyone?
I mean, the floating idea that you saw, there's a capability now of for wind power to float the facilities. They're not, you know,
Right.
anchored the same way, and they can be constructed. They can also make them without bladeless, so that they're safe for birds. So you're dealing with the creatures that use the water and the creatures that use the air.
That's
You know,
right.
it's friendly and it's providing us with this, you know, source of energy at the same time.
Right, so we have floating technologies to help things like wind turbines float. We have oxygen technologies to help us be submerged for a long amount of time.
Irrigation technologies.
Thank you. We have irrigation technologies to maybe move water. What else do we have?
And I think the whole notion of like movement is very interesting. We assign value to water based on where it is, where it isn't.
Can you say more about that?
Yeah, like just even the concept of wastewater as a term
Yeah.
is incredibly. By the way, you guys should all check out the new USGS water cycle.
Hey!
Finally incorporated humans in that diagram. It's actually excellent.
Wait, where do we find it?
On their website, they have
Okay.
updated it for the first time in 20 years to include humans in the water cycle. It was pretty sad that
It
it
took a
wasn't there before. But they
Okay.
did a good job.
Yeah, that's fantastic job, yeah.
But I think we assign value to water in very particular ways. And we don't often see it as an integrated system or kind of something that's inherently cyclical. So even the way we deal with wastewater in the city, it is about getting rid of it as fast as possible, even if that means dumping untreated sewage into our water bodies. Because once it's out, it's not our problem. That's kind of a matter of jurisdiction.
It's,
not-
yeah, it's a way, yeah.
Yeah, and it's not our problem.
But if you actually recreate a wetlands process, you can more effectively treat wastewater. It also means creating less waste, but mimic nature likes when you play with it, it will go along.
And I'm like a total proponent of nature-based solutions. That's what I
Right.
do. But it requires a kind of change in how we think about it. Even just using the term wastewater can be problematic. It's just water. It's dirty.
It's a-
We need to treat it.
Okay,
And what steps do we
that's
take to
going
do that?
into how you think about it in the circular system.
Yeah.
So that you're not messing it up for human or other use.
Yeah.
You know,
So what I'd like to do, now that we're thinking about these technologies, irrigation technologies, or floating technologies, or submerging technologies, swimming technologies, I want to invite you to brainstorm some ways. Oh, my husband said they were co-related. What I'm really interested is getting people to think about New York City in 30, 50, or 100 years, and ways we might engage anew with water. So ways that kind of move beyond the practical, right, the fixing of the pipes, and ways that really begin to imagine your like wildest dreams of what we might be able to do with water as a collaborator. However you define water. And so I'm just gonna offer you, so I have some brainstorming techniques. I'm getting the rest of the hands out paper.
I'll join the team.
Please join the table. So I have three particular techniques. They're called, you might be familiar with these. They're called, the first is called forced connections. So this is about how you might think about, you know, any sort of activity, service, or way of life. Like I was talking about walking the dog. What happens if you have to walk your dog in 2 feet of water every day, or 3 feet of water?
Dogs do actually dog paddle, but I don't know if it's swimmable.
Sure, but go with me. The second technique, and this is just to help your brains. What would the League of Justice do? So assume the mindset of a superhero, or the world of a superhero. So where anything is possible. And for those of you who are Brian Eno fans, oblique strategies, I just included a couple of them, so you can think about distorting time. What if 1 minute lasted a year? Do the words need changing, right? Maybe my language is something you want to change. Emphasize differences, emphasize repetitions, let go sleep away. I have some examples for you from prior, that's right, please open the floodgates of your imagination, yeah. So for example, forced connections, just add water, right? In the future, the Taxi Limousine Commission and the NTA become the Metropolitan Water Transit Authority that oversees submarine, ferry, water bus, and water taxis, right? Skyscrapers become seascrapers, right? They become buildings that actually are partially submerged in the water. Decommissioned military vessels become floating libraries with weekly docking schedules. Now, for those that I know a lot of you are like deeply enmeshed in this world, and I don't at all mean to dismiss the real world realities of what we're up against. But I do find that this kind of thinking can get us to new places, right? Sorry, I don't know where that slide went. My apologies. Right, so I'm not trying to dismiss the real pain and suffering and difficulties of climate change, but I am trying to create a space in which we might imagine, some completely different spaces that haven't been thought about or identified as ways to work with water in the future. And on the back, eventually what you're going to do is you're going to turn your idea into part of a feature front page of the New York Times. So on the back of your page is the anatomy of a front page. So I'm going to ask you, for whatever idea you make, to think about realizing it either as a feature image or as just a caption explaining like what the image might look like, or a headline that may or may not have a subhead or a deck. But that's just in a few minutes. We have a whole 20 minutes to work. This is normally a 2-hour workshop. So I have more pieces of paper for you where you can actually do a little bit of creative thinking about ways to think about wastewater, or maybe changing its name to a valuable commodity. I have some pencils if you need a pencil. So if this kind of thinking is a really new kind of thinking for you, I'm here to kind of help you work through that, or you can work with someone else. Yeah, I'd love to just have you spend a minute thinking and making notes by yourselves or in pairs for just a few minutes. So Bruce, maybe you want to think about some creative ways to knock some holes in the city streets, or to reopen up those spaces of the city that you were thinking about. Anyone need a writing implement? I have a big handful of them now. Hi, come on in.
That you had trouble with the Zoom. and that you use your own Zoom. And I was wondering if you did a recording, because if you want it included in the documentation, then I could compile it.
Oh, thank
or
you
at
so
least
much. Well,
include your slides, or if there's anything that you'd like to be included in the archive.
oh, thanks. Yeah. I
And
would,
the tech setup is talent is it's
yeah.
very particular. So if anything gets moved, as you probably found, or disconnected, then it.
Well, there wasn't anybody here to really give me any guidance, and I got the email this morning about logging into Zoom. I emailed someone yesterday saying I need to present on my own computer, but no one got back to me. So I have very limited time, so I unplugged the computer. I logged into the Zoom link that I was provided this morning, and then somebody came in and interrupted me and told me that I was ruining it because I'd thrown everybody off the Zoom.
Oh, no.
So,
I'm
you know,
sorry. Is
that's
there any-
where we
Were
are.
you able to record?
Well, I stopped recording because
Okay.
she made me
no.
feel like I was like there was nobody on the Zoom, so I stopped the Zoom.
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
So would you, so we have a little bit of that recording then, probably.
Probably
And
a
if
little
you'd like
bit.
me to, I don't know if these are your kind of personal materials or otherwise, but if there's any, if you would like the slides to be included.
Okay.
I can make sure that they're in the folder.
Oh, thanks,
for
Brenda. I
conference
appreciate that.
documentation,
I am gonna
yeah.
say
I'm just
no.
a postdoc that's floating around trying to help, but
Oh, that's
making sure
okay.
because two of my colleagues are out sick.
What a day for that.
Hmm.
Yeah, I'm not sure who was in here earlier, but it was a real punitive tone
Mm.
that
I
was
know a lot of folks have been kind of
I
stressed
know
about
it's
it,
just stressful. I know.
but that shouldn't, no excuse.
Um,
No excuse for that.
Hopefully there will be
That's-
outcomes to put in the archives.
Okay.
How do I find you after this, Bernadette?
Right down.
Yeah. Yeah, this is what everyone's gonna work on. Yeah. Yeah, please. So does anyone have any ideas? Some weird ideas? Maybe not weird ideas?
I would love this definition. Of the little lots of these words, because it's kind of entertaining.
Oh, cool.
Fascinating. Sorry, I interrupted you.
No, it's fine. I've been, the basketball season started, I have sports on my mind, so I was thinking about what sports we might play in the future. I thought about jet ski polo as an
Yes, please.
idea of making something that's very elitist, a little bit more egalitarian, but also something that can be shared by people on water or by skyscrapers. But then you also think like any future movie, you always have that bloodthirsty sport that sort of is like spectacle for like a super like capitalist world. So it's like, is jet ski polo something that like we all share? Or is it a way in which like the people who are water bound must survive?
That's dark.
Well,
That's a little
I'm a
dark.
graduate student, so there's a lot of darkness in me.
Let it out, just let it out. Okay, so we have some future sports. Thank you, Bernadette. Thank you, BBB. Boy, good boy. Thank you, I appreciate that. Anybody else have some thoughts that they're working on? Yeah, Bruce.
I don't have a specific thing. I mean, I have, having given some more examples, I have a specific area of interest on the North Shore of Staten Island.
Please.
And I know it on the map, it exists, but it's underground, called Bodine Creek, which is actually the outlet for the Clove Lakes.
Yeah.
On the North Shore. And I know that people know of it, but what I don't know is the best way to call attention to it and how to do it. And I think it needs some sort of ceremonial performance-like thing. I don't know if it's an annual thing or more, maybe that like elements of Columbia has this annual Morningside Lights thing, which they just had.
Yep.
You have the bread puppets, the giant puppets like that, maybe some Native American ceremonies, elements that, and obviously artistic sense, which literally will show you that are part of it, where this thing is beneath your feet.
Please, okay, Bruce, I want you to think about the who, what, where, when, why, and how of this. Just hypothetically, just dream the moment. I love what you're saying. I want to see this crafted in the mind's eye. I'm going to come back to you. I'm going to come back to you. to come back to. Anybody else have ideas that they,
Mine is pretty mundane, but I couldn't get it out of my mind to think bigger, like more below. But or text people. But I'm thinking about, I have a garden in a property upstate, and thinking about how soggy that place becomes. But sometimes and soggy
Yes.
sounds like a negative term, but I mean, like, really need to think about plants that can withstand moisture and not get sick from that. But at the same time, this past year, we've experienced severe drought.
yep, that's
So
right.
it's been like this sort of dysregulation of, I love what you said about water as a cycle. It's not just water, which is your prompt, I know. So I was thinking, that maybe there's like a sort of ecology and plant companions of the future that maybe can sort of help one another regulate those different extremes of drought versus water inundation that maybe don't come on like the recommended plant for this zone right now.
Yes.
So that was kind of my personal
I love it. And your name's Lita?
lead, yeah.
Lita, thank you, Lita. So please build out the who, what, why, when, like, try to create a specific vision of that. I think that's a beautiful idea. And I don't actually think it's mundane at all. Because I think we are gonna have these like bigger and bigger swings. Right? Anybody else?
I was thinking about the different kinds of stuff like that, just like the kind of practice change. And then I was thinking about like what we do building, so like trees, so much, bigger cracks. What's the word there? It's that really beautiful, like a word for yeah, it's nice, smaller things. Interesting. But it's not big scale either.
No, that's, I mean, it isn't, and yet it is when you think about all the potential cracks and tiny spaces that exist
Yeah,
in our not so small city.
yeah.
Right? That's actually quite a huge idea.
And like, actually, like it is that I know there's like a.
Mm.
Yeah. There's, yeah. Okay.
Cool. Now, we don't have a ton of time, so if you're interested in thinking about writing a headline, I have a couple of sheets I'll just lay around. Some famous headlines, as you know, headlines have their own grammar. So stick, snick, snick, ticks, right? There's a kind of alliteration that sounds so. My favorite headline of all time is Headless Body, found in Headless Body in Topless Bar. Underwear bandit caught, admits brief crime spree. That was in Alaska. The 2021, two of the 2021 headline writing winners were in Riverside Park, bleeding around the bushes. This is about the introduction of goats.
Yes, mowing,
Mowing the park. And then there is
and they love poison ivy.
Mark Olson from the Los Angeles Times, buying a yacht might have to skipper, which is about the fluctuation in the boat markets. But I have some things about how to write headlines, if you're interested. Our inevitable goal is we have these blank front pages of the New York Times to fill. And so what I would love to ask you to do, if you're up to the challenge, is to actually think about how you might realize your idea either as a headline or even a caption or just a notional drawing, not all of them, but just one of them. And to make 2 copies, one for you and one for me. So you get to take one home and I'll keep one for the archives. And the eventual goal is that this archives will be shown in the city as a kind of future archives of the city. So I have a bunch of Sharpies. Because what else is archival? We've got tips and bin tips and pencils if you need to sketch or just want to practice writing. So the key to both caption writing and headline writing is just who, what, when, why, how. Try to identify, an image with a few small details. But yeah, so one of this trimmed down pages for you and this untrimmed pages for me, because I'm not sure how they're going to be shown, if they're going to be framed yet, or how they're going to be displayed. So whatever ideas you have, I would love for you to realize them on a future front page. It's okay, we can go over a little bit. That's why Thad gave me this last spot, is so that we could go over a little bit. So it's like that. This is a 2-hour workshop. These are 45 minutes. You can do it.
Yeah, it doesn't usually talk.
Yeah, even just a headline would be fantastic, because it's not about filling in the whole page. It's actually just about drawing, like creating one visible idea. Just this air system is very aggressive.
Yeah.
Very cold. It is very aggressive and very chilly. I'll use my phone as a paperweight. Really exciting. Bruce, come make your vision live. I want to see this ritual. I want to see the ritual marking the water.
Excuse that I've actually.
Oh, Kyle, really? See how you do this. Did you do it again?
It's terrifying.
So it's crossed off the bucket list. That's what I'm hearing.
Yeah,
What was it about?
oh, Star Search.
Storm surge. Oh, just a little thing. Storm surge. Okay. When was that?
So it was about Irma. It was Irma.
Oh, okay. I can only imagine. I worked briefly for New York Magazine, and that was horrifying, and not even the New York Times, not even the paper of record, and it was horrifying.
New York Times, Wall Street Journal was the other one. Which was even more interesting, I would say.
The Observer? I don't know what you're talking about.
The Wall Street Journal.
Yeah. Oh, you wrote for them as well?
Yes.
How was that? Better or
So-
worse?
No, the New York Times is better.
I'm happy to hear that. Well, thank you for coming and thinking about it.
Yeah.
What do you think, Bruce?
I mean, a headline doesn't actually do its.
A caption might. North Shore Staten Islanders gather for this year's.
Yeah, I was thinking more of a play in words, but it has no, it doesn't express the action of whatever it is, a parade or whatever movement it is that shows what it is if you want to reveal, and how to do it.
So you need a word of crowd, like crowd, that means river.
I mean, the lines for that, see, but the tagline has nothing to do with the story, which even the Times does those things of, the headline, it's got nothing to do with what it is. In fact, they're pulling a fast one. This is not what the story is about. They have lured you in. So
It's the art of persuasion. It's the art of provocation, actually.
That's actually perfect.
It's the art of
I mean, the
provocation.
closest thing that I get to
Give it to me.
water, even here, boatings, creeks, bodacious lore, because there was nothing else that comes close to writing.
Boating
with
creates bodacious
Bodacious
lore.
lore.
So we want like a,
L-U-R-A,
we want like a
draws
voluptuous
you.
community. We want a voluptuous crowd.
Okay, so now that's better words. Voluptuous.
Well, I don't know if it's voluptuous.
I don't know, but like,
Good word, guys.
it's too many syllables though. Headlines are like,
Voluptuous, okay.
I mean, I'm making the name of the creek bodacious,
I
so
know.
it's really exciting. There's something I really want to see.
yeah.
So it's luring you in, but then the story has to tell you what,
Well, you can tell a little bit of the story in the subhead. Come on, Bruce. Come on, Bruce. Come on, you can do it, Bruce. Do you want to do it in pencil so it's not so Bruce? Do it. I'm gonna bring you a pencil. Kyle, can you help him?
No.
Write the subhead first of like what it really is.
no, I don't have it. I don't have it.
You have it.
I don't have it.
All right, so let's just, what did you first have? Let's workshop this.
You mean what it was?
Yeah.
It's to open up this body of water.
Yeah, no, but what's the headline that you?
Water, even here. Boating creeks, B-O-D-I-N-E, creeks, bodacious lore, L-U-R-E. Couldn't find anything that, nothing to mind that, rhymed with creek, but boating and bodacious were together. I'm
Boating creeks, bodacious lore, draws a sexy crowd.
Nah, yeah, but it's not that, I don't.
I had a word.
It's not that it's sexy.
No, I know. I had, oh, something about revealing.
Well, yes, I could have had reveal, but it didn't rhyme. I mean, I could just say bodacious reveal, which really is more what it is rather than lore. And maybe I could just drop
How about the
lore.
headline is just the bodacious reveal?
Actually,
How about that? And then,
I mean, the Times will never have a subheading no longer Schitt's Creek.
That actually was
that's
something.
the reveal.
When-
Wait, how do you, wait, no, this is it, this is it.
Turns it eventually into a
No,
sewer.
no longer,
Schitt's Creek.
that's it.
But that's not gonna appear in Gray Lady. The Gray Lady is,
It's gonna appear in
Blue
this,
Nose.
it's gonna appear in this gray lady, and that's what matters. So boating creek, remembered, or in the, with
Oh,
the
that's
subhead.
good. That's good.
Boating
Boating Creek comes back to life.
Yes.
or sees the light of day or something. like
Ah,
that.
That's good. I like that.
There we go. The bodacious reveal, no longer Schitt's Creek, Boating Creek sees the light of day. We got there. Do you want to write a version of that in your own handwriting?
No.
Okay.
I do want to catch the closing remarks.
Oh, thank you. Will you sign it?
Sure.
And what do you want? You. Caroline.
Yes.
Nice to meet you. Thank you.
Yeah, I don't work back there.
I know, I'm sorry. I'm sorry to ask you to.
But anyway, I had a thought, so.
No, it's a great thought. I'm gonna be dreaming of frogs in cracks now. I am. I'm absolutely serious. I'm gonna be dreaming of frogs in cracks of buildings.
You won't all be negative, like, they'll be little nice things.
Thank you, Bruce.
I mean, the only thing that I could add, it's obvious, it's the clove lakes emotional outlet.
Say it again?
The clove lakes
Okay.
emotional outlet. Clove lakes empty into.
I love that.
Hillbank Hollow. right?
Yes. That's really beautiful. Thank you. You did it. You got there. How'd it go?
Oh, yes, but then, I don't know if this would make headlines, but this is just like.
Oh, thank you. That's great. That's wonderful. That's wonderful. Can I ask you just to make one more on a big sheet? Just write that headline. You don't have to do the whole thing. Oh, got it.